Bird, 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 bird. Get him. Yeah! Ron Babe was right. Ron Babe was right.
I'm feeling spry. Hey everybody, it's Ron Bain with the Hunting Dog Podcast. It is the 26th of February. Let's just call it over, huh? It's a short month anyway. I'm calling it 2 days shorter. We're done with it. And once we hit the Ides of March, we got open fields, we got dog training, we've got everything we need. And what we also have is our title sponsor, Onyx, helping us get there. Did you realize that Onyx you can access with the help of this simple little tool on your phone? 852 million acres of public land, 9,568 unique hunting units such as WMAs, WPAs, Army Corps of Engineer land, state forests, all that. I mean, just think about it. Like 8.5 million acres. Well, if you tell me you can't find a bird in 8.5 million acres, well, you shouldn't be listening to this show. You should get yourself Onyx. Get it now. Get the Onyx Elite. The cool part about getting Onyx Elite, if you are kind of new to this show, because I know the rest of you have heard it 100 times, but if you're kind of new to this show, Onyx Elite members have the only industry standard discount on the Upland Institute because Onyx has partnered with the Upland Institute to give their Onyx Elite members. So don't just get Onyx and get one state. Get Onyx Elite. You can get the discount for Upland Institute, and you'll be on your way with your dog looking for 8.5 million acres of land. Of course, a lot of that's in Nevada, and I don't count that. But let's just call it 700 million. While you're out there hunting on all those millions of acres, you should be wearing pike pants, pike shirts, pike vest, pike overcoat, pike jacket, pike Nikes. No, I'm just kidding. There's no pike Nikes, no pike shoes. There is no. I totally want to be transparent about that. But everything else they make is for the upland hunter out of technical fabric, the kind of stuff that you like spending hours in on those 8.5 million acres of land. That's the truth. And Gunner Kennels, you could put your dog in that kennel and safely transport it all 9,568 of those unique hunting areas or anywhere on that public land system. Keep your dog safe. Use a Gunner Kennel. You can have the fan. They've got you covered for the summer. They've got you covered for the winter with the winter door kit. They got the winter cover kit. There's no need to get any other kennel. That's it. And it'll outlast you and the truck that you drive it in. And, I mean, you could figure that, right? I don't think our dogs should outlive our trucks, like the day we sign for them. But they do, because trucks and cars are just, I'm getting 10 years out of something, fine. You might get 12, 15 years out of a dog. You will get a lifetime out of a Gunner Kennel. So there. I mean, I don't know what else you need. Once you have the dog in the pike gear and you've studied Onyx and everything, you need a collar. You need a collar for training your dog. You need a collar for the safety of your dog. You can train a dog, and I did it years ago. I did it with Saigon. I went all the way to the Invitational, and that dog had an e-collar on him one evening of his entire training life, and he went all the way to the Invitational, which means he got a prize one utility. So it can be done, but for safety alone, I have a Garmin TT15 around all my dogs' necks. The Garmin 550 Plus is my weapon of choice because I'm not a tech guy. I'm not a data points guy. But if you are that guy or that girl or that whatever alien that came down here and decided to get into dogs, you can go to W Hunting Supply, talk to Jason or Buddy or any of the staff there, and they will guide you through all the Garmin models. And if you ask them, are there any other brands of dog training collars? They'll say, yeah, there are, but let's talk about the ones we sell the most of. Let's talk about Garmin. See, that's how W gets you. Yeah. I am going to be making, with birds shot by my Boss Shot Shells and Walton Spices, tonight I am going to make it pheasant schnitzel. I've been wanting to do it forever. I always see people do it with turkey and pork, and I don't know why I never thought of it. I thought out, my wife's gone so I can make a mess in the kitchen. She hates it when I cook. But I'll just wipe everything down. She'll never know I made a mess and burn the oil. But I will have my Walton spices to once I pound that pheasant's little breast in that was already pounded by Boss ammunition and passed through. I looked at the breast meat earlier after it thawed out. That everything passed through. That's why the birds are all dead from the Boss copper-plated bismuth. It's the perfect complement. I never thought of that in my other intros. Like, shoot them with Boss, season them with Waltons. What else could you do? And that's it. That's it. Deck drawer systems is, well, I mean, if you haven't looked into deck drawer systems, then you probably haven't been out on any public roads or public parks or public areas or hunted anywhere, because everywhere I see a tailgate drop, I see a deck drawer in a truck. It's getting to be it's not as popular as, like, let's say Purina Pro Plan. Okay. That I see in almost everybody's food container. And if you're smart, you'd have a Gunner food container. But I'll bet you, without exaggerating, 30% of the people's tailgates I saw drop this year had a deck drawer system in it, because they got it, they get it, they want it. It's where you store all your shit. It's your two big giant junk drawers, and you still get the whole bed of the truck to use. Right, exactly. I wouldn't store your Purina Pro Plan in there, because you'd have to lay the bag in long ways. You'd waste a lot of drawer space. I would put your Purina Pro Plan into a Gunner food crate. That's what I would do. But it's up to you. Whatever you want to use your deck drawer for, you could store all your wilderness athlete, canine athlete products in there, your new dog, your hydrate and recover for you and the dog. They are different items. Do not mix them. There's human and canine. You've got everything. You could put a little bit of everything in that deck drawer system. But what you can't put in that deck drawer system is knowledge. And knowledge comes in training your dog with the Upland Institute, which ties all the way back into, what a segue, Onyx, my title sponsor, who also supports the Upland Institute with Onyx Elite Program. And lastly, can you believe it? Lastly, it's hardly ever a lastly. Where are we at? 7 minutes? That's not bad. 7 by 8 minutes by the time I'm done yammering. I've done worse. The Hunting Dog Podcast store. You know, we did not bring that store to Pheasant Fest because we didn't want to get a retailer's license and go through all the hubbub of having a whole nother person on staff there swiping a credit card and all that crapola. But the HDP store is open. Go to Hunting Dog Podcast website, go to the store. It'll send you to the link. And, you know, get what everybody's... we're selling a crap ton of these. Of all the things, I thought it was just cute because Jesse was having a baby, so we got a onesie, you know, in the store. And that thing is selling like hotcakes because everybody knows somebody who's having a baby. And, you know, why you want to get them diapers, right? Like, there's even guys that go to diaper parties. Like, my son-in-law, Adam, went to another buddy of his, like, what we would have called a smoker, but they call it a diaper party, which sounds weird, but guys don't like to shop. You know, everybody knows that. It's not a stereotype. It's a damn fact. So they all just stop at 7-Eleven or Wesco gas station. They get a pack of diapers, and they go over and get drunk with their buddy who's getting a baby, who's, you know, already married. They already been to the bachelor party. Now they're celebrating. Well, you know what? Be a little more creative. If you're going out to a bachelor party or a bachelorette party or whatever, any kind of christening party, I don't care if it, whatever, you could find stuff right down to the onesie from the HTP store. Well, that added another minute and 40 seconds, but you knew that was going to happen. Hey, this episode, I want to thank Dave Utzinger for turning me on to Mark. Mark is a real interesting fella. I can't wait to meet him in person. He's got a lot of different thoughts and philosophies on dogs, but they're all based on years of, like everybody did, learning from other mentors on training dogs. And two things about this episode. We talk about his start with the Labradors, but his finish, the end of the podcast, we do a pretty good dive into the Blue Picardy Spaniel. Yeah. He brought him to Pheasant Fest, and I could kind of describe him to you, but I'll let Mark describe them to you in this episode. Thanks for listening. I love you guys. I love you girls. And I love you people out there training your dogs to spring even more.
Hey, everybody, it's Ron Bain with the Hunting Dog Podcast. I am on the phone. Actually, I'm on a Zoom meeting with Mark Stalock. Stalock. I'm going to say it's Stalock because I can't
Say
get past
Stalock.
the
That's fine.
Mark Stalock. The way I found Mark was actually through a friend of mine named Dave Utzinger, who a while back called up Mark asking some advice. I believe it was on some labs or some other dogs. And he got off the phone with him and sent me a text. He goes, I found this guy that you got to have on the podcast because he loves to talk dogs. I'm like, well, that's a good fit. And I could have actually probably recorded some of this conversation over the last couple of days talking to Mark. But to make it official, Mark owns Norse Retrievers in Minnesota, about an hour and a half west of the Twin Cities, and actually came up to the booth at Pheasant Fest and said he'd got my message. I've been wanting to do a podcast. And one of the things I lack a lot of is not being a Labrador person. Mark has been in the Labrador world for decades, and he's also into a what I call a rare breed that I've yet to ever see in the field, which is a Blue Picardy Spaniel. But we're going to get to that toward the end, Mark. But
Okay.
Mark, if you would, give us a little, overview of Norse kennels, little history, little origin, and then we'll just take it from there.
Like a lot of people, started out hunting when I was a kid. Was taught by my grandfather, who grew up in the Depression, and every bird that got up was a potential meal. And so we were meat hunters, and as I progressed in my love of hunting, hunting, fishing, and trapping, I decided I needed a dog because it just seemed silly to keep growing after ducks, and hunting pheasants without a dog is rather asinine.
Yeah.
I mean, if the people could see me, they'd be like, they would see that's not a man who goes for long walks for no good reason. There better be a purpose. And pheasant hunting without a dog is go for walks with no good reason.
Yeah.
I mean, the first shotgun I ever bought, I bought with trapping money, and then like I said, hunted through my teens and early 20s. After I graduated college, I bought my first dog with my first, and ended up being my best dog with college graduation money. Ended up it was a black lab male. I got really lucky. Did everything wrong. Got it out of the newspaper, but it was from some guys that were out of the Watopa Club in Winona, Minnesota, along the Mississippi River, the oldest retriever field trial club in the state of Minnesota, and they bred to good dogs, and so I was a beneficiary of that. And like I said, just dumb luck. And as I was going to grad school at Mankato State, my mom saw an ad in the local paper looking for winter help for retriever field trial pro to go down to South Carolina with him and be his assistant. And so I went over, and the fact that I was very able-bodied at the time, could do a lot of work, and was not on meth during the interview was how I got the job.
That was the big one, right?
you have a valid driver's license.
Yeah.
You look like you can lift lift half a ton, and you're not drunk or on meth right now as we speak. So
the bar wasn't high, but you did set. You were.
I jumped over it quite well. Yes, and so. So and once again, I just got lucky. The guy's name is Chris Smith, out of South Central Minnesota, and he was an excellent field trial trainer. To the extent that we would get other field trial pros dogs to fix, and get their heads screwed on straight, so they go back on the other guy's truck and run field trials. Learned a ton from Chris. There's always good and bad that you learn, but I was very, very fortunate to learn the system of how to train labs. and other retrievers and spaniels. Go ahead, Ron.
Well, Mark, so you get a job. I would say your first job, and I know we talked a little bit about this yesterday off microphone. The first job is just you're his right hand man for chores, right? I mean, did
Yeah.
the thought of like I'm gonna turn this into my trade later, or was just like, hey, cool summer job or cool winter job? Is that really what
No,
it was in the beginning?
it was something I wanted to do, and
Mm,
as I guess gained his trust and was shown not to be a buffoon.
yeah.
And I really think that a couple things helped me. Growing up in a farm family. My uncle Tom is a great yeller, so anything that Chris yelled at me was like, oh, nice try, but
Okay.
you know
You never failed. Hey, with my uncle. You never
yeah,
failed. Hey, with
yeah.
my
Yes, my uncle toted a M60 through Vietnam. I knew he killed people. So
right.
whatever you did, Chris, was like, nice try, but you're not that good. Uh,
Yeah.
and having a liberal arts education allowed me to understand and suck in a lot of very complex training techniques and be able to understand what we're doing, because it is a very cerebral thing. And then I took a couple years off from working for him, and by a happenstance, the guy in South Carolina that was hosting us, another dog trainer, was driving through my hometown as I was working for the local newspaper. I saw his dog truck. I'm like, you just don't see dog trucks driving around. So I followed him,
Right.
and he'd pulled over, and I'm like, hey, Mr. Bishop, what's going on? And he was just shocked to see me, and he said, well, I'm on my way to Saskatchewan. I'm gonna go stop at Chris's. So and he couldn't read the map because he's dyslexic. So I helped him. So I'm like, just go up here and oh, here's another thing. Most very successful dog trainers have some sort of learning disability. But so I gave Mr. Bishop the directions to Chris's house, and about 3 months later, Chris called me at work and said, "Hey, do you want to go down south again?" And I kind of looked around like, newspaper business, not for me. Yeah, yeah. He's like, "Can you leave next week?" Yeah, I'll tell my boss this afternoon. And that trip I got to do. I handled the dogs. I would say about 50% of the time. So a lot more hands-on training.
So here's a I have literally had people write me this question, Mark, that
Mm.
they want to learn to be a dog trainer, right? That they love dogs so much that they want to be a dog trainer. But would it be accurate to say that no one's ever invented this on their own? It's always something's always handed down to somebody, right? Because
Yeah, and really uh, the guy that invented it was Rex Carr out of California. The man was brilliant. He was a World War II vet, and that's the guy who everybody who people went and learned from for a long time. And kind of the rule of thumb in the of the people that really understand the system and for real know how to train a dog is you're kind of obligated to teach one other person, and I did that.
mhm.
But you end up running off a lot of people, because this is like, are you serious about this? If you're not serious about it, I'm uh, uh, I'm not going to be nice about it. And it's a way of weeding out people who are just not serious about it. It's the same thing as a guy I know from Southern Minnesota, won the state championship wrestling a couple times. Went to wrestle for the Iowa Hawkeyes, and basically one of the assistant coaches, like the first week of practice, attacked him in the wrestling room. I mean, like, really got after him. This guy's like an Olympic quality wrestler, and he just smash mouthed this kid. And then he went and wrestled with him again the next day, and the kid from Southern Minnesota did the exact same thing, shot in on him, and he just goes, "Okay, good. I want to see if you do it. You,
So,
or do you belong in this wrestling room?
so this is again, this is
do
Uncle
you belong?"
Tom's.
Yeah,
This is
it
Uncle
is.
Tom's trial by fire.
Yes, absolutely. Do you really want to
Yeah.
learn this? Because that's exactly what you said. Is everybody with a duck dog and a whistle? Oh, I want to be a retriever trainer. Oh, well,
Yeah.
really? How much do you want? How much do you want to be shown a few things so you can go hang out a shingle and start making money, or do you want to learn actually how these dogs work and what's fair and unfair to give them as corrections and how to get the most out of the animal with while still making it be excited and happy about what we're doing? Because that's the important thing is you got to you a lot of guys can make dogs do stuff and crush them at the same time. Well, that's no
Yeah.
fun. That's
Mark,
not what we're looking for.
this might be an unfair question, but I told you I'll be slinging some at you while we're chatting over the next
Mhm.
hour or two. Um, when we've been referring to trial dogs. Now these are mostly Labradors we're talking about. Is
Yeah, yeah.
is does a trial dog always have to come from a trial dog? Is it at this point in the development of that kind of desire, that kind of speed, or does that guy that never stepped into a boxing ring show up at a trial, or is it it's just does it have to come from another trialer almost at this point?
Um, if you asked me the same question 30 years ago, Chris made a great point. He said to me one time, the greatest Labrador or golden retriever in the world could be tied up on a log chain to a tree in somebody's backyard. We don't know. We haven't given that dog an opportunity to be trained and to excel. But at this point, the kind of the Labradors have been stretched in so many different ways that and
Right.
people have I'm going to make a pointing lab. I'm going to make a Snow White lab. I'm going to make all these things that are not about getting the core of the breed and
Right.
its basic talents. I would say that it's you're to get a good dog. It's best to find something that there's at least maybe at least a generation or two back where you
Yeah.
have some hunt tested trial dogs. And you know um as we're as you're sitting here on the Gun Dog podcast, well, why are we talking about trial dogs? Well, I'm going to tell you why. Because the best house dogs I've ever had were field champions. I mean,
Hmm.
the best buddy dog outside my own dog that I've ever been involved with was an amateur field champion from northern Minnesota that literally was one bird away from winning the Canadian National one year. And
Wow.
I mean, he was just every morning when you came out to let him out of the dog truck, he would roll over on his back because Willie wanted to get his tum tum scratched. So this
So
is this is the best, most powerful dog in the truck, and he'd flop his head out of the kennel and look upside down. He'd be like, "Yeah, I need to go potty, but you really need to scratch my tummy first." So I mean, and I've had national field trial champions in the back seat of my truck because I picked them up to breed to them,
yeah.
and they're just chilling. They're
Yeah.
sit. These high powered dogs are also the best. Most of the time, the best duck dogs, best family dogs. I
So
mean,
that that
with a few exceptions.
sure, there's always the exception, the guy
Yeah.
down the block, the dog that didn't do it, but because it's the most popular dog in America, right? It's the most popular
Yeah.
registered dog in America. And you're right, there's ones that live around the lakes here that probably haven't seen a duck in 10 generations, but there's still something like iconic about the lab that you'd want that you wouldn't want the lab field trial champion that also couldn't be your best buddy and hang out in a lawn chair, right? I mean, they
Exactly. Exactly.
yeah, you don't want
I mean,
something that's spinning in the cage all day long. That's not what we're looking for.
no, and something else you have to think about with the field trial dogs is that most of the owners that are running these dogs are quite elderly. I mean, you don't go to a field trial and see a bunch of 20-year-olds. Oh, they're throwing
No,
out there
they're all
throwing birds,
Yeah.
yeah, they're all guys in their 50s, 60s, and 70s. I mean, one of the most precious things I've ever seen in my life was a guy named Hank Knobloch from Bemidji. He had three field champions at the time, and I think this was Dottie that I saw do this. Well, it had rained out a little bit that morning, and at the field trials we run from like little mounds, like exaggerated pitcher's mounds, so that
Yeah.
we can see the dog while they're running, and the dog can see the marks. You can see the birds going down. Some of these birds are 300-400 yards away, and so it was slippery out, and and Hank was like, Mr. Knobloch was like 75, 78, something like that. And so somebody was escorting him up to the mound, making sure he didn't fall. So somebody had him by the arm and going very slow. And his field champion Dottie was off lead, heeling next to him, looking up at Dad, making sure she kept out of his way. Like, come on, Dad,
Yeah.
we're gonna go do
Yeah.
this. And I mean, she was so concerned. I mean, she knew it was game time, but she also knew, I've got Dad's having trouble walking, so I've got to make sure I keep out of his way, and I'm a good girl. So
I mean,
that's a field trial
that
dog.
just says lab. I mean, it's the only.
Yeah,
I shouldn't say it's the only dog, but it's one of the few. Let's just say only. Someone's going to correct me. Who cares? It's
yeah,
also the only dog we trust to lead blind people across the street, right? I
yes,
mean,
yeah.
they have that human connection that not every dog has.
No,
There is
that's
some,
very true.
yeah,
I mean, having worked with a couple dozen different breeds over the years, yeah, some of them just don't have a great human connection, and
right. And they're
that's
very good. They're good hunting dogs, but they're not
great
like,
tools.
yeah, a great tool in a toolbox, but and could be a good house dog too. But yeah,
Yeah,
I wouldn't let the 2-year-old toddler starting to learn how to walk be around, one of my
because
short
they
hairs back in the day,
yeah
right?
because they just might not care if they bulldoze the dog, the kid.
They just don't care, right?
Yeah.
And so I want to bring it back to, like, people always ask, and because we're really focusing on labs here. So let's say you've got some well-bred labs. They've got some pedigrees in their background, and you've bred. I don't even know. We never talked about the amount of litters, but you've been at it for a while, Mark. When
I've
you
bred
have,
over 50 field trail hunt test litters.
oh, that's got some data there. So when you get a litter of puppies, and there's all these different games you can play with them. There's like these mental stimulation games, trying to pick out that pup. Would the Fila trialers be more like the Bob Whaley back in the day? Would they keep the whole litter longer to do more evaluation, or because 8 weeks is just such a crapshoot?
It's an arbitrary number.
Yeah.
No, really, because by about 8 to 10, 12 weeks, you really want to get those puppies out of the litter and get them
Right.
socialized with a person. So
Hmm.
and you're really not going to be able to tell a whole lot of difference in that time. And to be honest, it the whole goal of breeding, in my opinion, is so that the breed is the litter is very homogenous. That it shouldn't matter which of the three boys you pick out of litter. They should be pretty much the same. I mean, you
Yeah.
might find one that is a little bit better, but they should all be on the same par. There shouldn't be this, this alpha and omega idea is almost a litter failure, because you want them all to be
Yeah.
this to be the same as possible.
You're the first person who answered it that way, Mark, and that makes sense because when someone says, I'm going to help you pick out the puppy, I'm going to give you the most rambunctious one, the middle of the road one, or we got a couple of shy ones. We've always heard that, and we always like, yeah, that makes sense. But what you're right, you're trying to replicate the parents and the grandparents, so they
Yeah.
should be pretty much I mean, for the
You
most
know,
part,
probably the most successful litter of maybe any sporting breed was done in the 50s. It was called the fish litter, because every one of these puppies were named after a fish. Like, one was named
uh,
Pike, one was named Shad. That the Shad one actually was misspelled on the AKC paperwork and turned out to be Shed. But every one of these dogs made field champion. Now, granted, that was because they went to the right people that were gonna
Well,
field
sure.
trial them,
Yeah.
and but yeah, they should all be this. They should all be the same. And the other thing about picking out a puppy, but well, I want a rambunctious one. Well, just because you rolled down my driveway doesn't mean that they are ready to put on the show. The
Right.
one that's the squirreliest at 10:30 in the morning when you came to pick out your puppy, he may have been sleeping all day, and the rest of them did hot laps for 3 hours, and now
Right.
they
Right.
they don't want to move because they're pooped, and lazy McLaserson just got up, and he's full of some energy compared to the other
Right.
ones because he's been sleeping all morning.
Yeah.
So
I heard a person say one time, if the breeder would allow it, your chances of first, second, third, fourth pick and all that, that's a human construct. You'd be better
yeah,
off closing your eyes, reaching in the whelping kennel, and
yes,
falling in love with that one, right? I mean, the
Wh-
chances
which
should be that good.
whichever one take fits your fancy that you are for some unknown reason naturally drawn to is the one you should take. I mean,
Yeah.
yeah, you should realistically the grab one if it's got the right plumbing, take it home. I mean,
Right. Right.
yeah,
Don't
yeah. I mean,
don't mistake,
be,
don't mistake a
be,
girl for a boy. Other than
yeah.
that, that's your biggest
Well, in our
assignment.
modern age, in our modern age, that's not so easy. But
Hmm. Hmm.
yeah. So somebody a novice asked me that the question one time, or actually several times I've had this question. How do you pick out a puppy? Or I'm really looking for this, and somebody told me if I look for that, then I'm going to be most successful, and all this hoo ha. And I just tell them, hey, if I could pick the best litter from a puppy, I would have a rich dude flying me around on his private jet, going to field trial litters and going, here's your next national champ, bro. Okay, I'll take 100 grand right now. But
Right. Right.
it's not possible.
There's no Ouija board when it comes to
No,
picking out a puppy. No.
no.
So I'm gonna go
My criteria is usually kind of weird. I mean,
my, yeah, mine is the last couple dogs that I picked that I had a chance to observe. It was the one that picked up the biggest stick and hit itself on the fence post with it because it didn't want to drop the stick.
just
There's
as
no science.
just as good-
No
that's just as good as anything else.
right.
My three best dogs ever were the last out of the litter, every one of them. I
Yeah,
mean,
that happened to me one time also. I had a dog that was a German Wirehair that was undershot,
mhm.
and anybody that would buy a dog, you know, there's always a chance that they would breed the dog, and you're trying to breed. So I said, you know what, I'm going to keep him unless somebody says, no, I'm gonna make a pet out of him, and I don't care. So I kept the undershot dog. I took that dog all the way to the NAVDA Invitational, and a judge that a lot of people really respect and knows dogs and knows wire hairs. His name is Davey Cavens. He came up to me. He was handling me in the field portion. And even though on his third attempt at backing, he waffled and we didn't make it because of the backing, that was I'll take the blame for that. He came up to me and says, Ron, he says, I know a dozen people out west that need to breed to that dog. And then I showed him the bite,
Well,
and he's like, oh,
oh,
Ron, you got me. But I mean, I get it. No one's going to go purposely breed to that. But to your point, that was the last dog in the litter because everybody passed on it because I was very
sure.
transparent. I said, I will tell you, this dog has an undershot bite and it's not going to improve. It's not going to change, you know. So you're right. It could be the dog. Once you know dogs, it's kind of like what you put into them and what you know about them, and then you can bring out the best in them. I'm assuming, right?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it's no different than a woodworker. If you start out with not too good a wood, it's really hard to make beautiful cabinets. But if you start out with beautiful flawless wood, that sure goes a long way to showing off
Yeah,
your skills. I
yeah,
mean,
yeah,
and a lot of dogs can be nice dogs, can be very workable dogs. It's it's that spark that I can't explain to you that makes a winner. And even just my I would probably say the second best dog I ever owned. I was out pheasant hunting with a big group of guys in Iowa, and there was like a dozen, 15 dogs out, and just about every one of them came up to me and said, "Who's that bigger black lab you had out?" Because
Yeah.
she's my current house dog. Her name's Oreo, and there's a great Oreo story of of why I have her and other people don't. Two people abandoned her. And this is
Wow.
out of a dog that is a field champion from Washington State and a master hunter from here in Minnesota. And I mean,
Wow.
the field trial champion, I watched it be a national finalist in the amateur one year up in northern Minnesota. But there's just something about her that even a novice can go, there's something different about that dog.
Yeah.
That dog's got a spark, and it doesn't matter what breed it is. If it's a
Right.
boy or a girl, there's some dogs that just give off that pizzazz.
Yeah. So some of them just look like Paul Newman with them eyes, right? You just like, guy's
Yeah,
got to be a good actor.
yeah,
Look the
yeah,
way
yeah,
he's
yeah.
right.
Yeah,
You
you're
know,
just drawn to their skill and to their and to their demeanor while they're doing it.
right.
Um, so,
I had a
but
I got a podcast coming up with a trainer from England with Cocker Spaniels, and I got on one of his monthly Zoom meetings, and I just paid to go on, and I sent
Mhm.
him a question ahead of time, and I'm gonna be putting this question up to trainers and breeders about eye contact with a dog. How much weight do you put in it, or do you just expect good eye contact with your dog between you and him, or is that one of the things that is the spark that
Well, you mean like when we're working with each other, or
yeah, like some dogs will kind of do their job, but then there's other dogs that always you just always catch them like kind of
looking at you?
here, like that they're always looking up to you almost as opposed to just doing their job.
Um, the thing of it is, especially uh with retrievers, they're supposed to be looking for a retrieve. So I guess it depends on what we're doing. I mean, if we're working on healing, yeah, you better be looking at me. You need to be paying attention to what I'm doing because where I go is where you need to go. You're not going to dictate where we're going. I dictate where we're going. So yeah, to be looking up at me and paying attention is quite critical. But
Right.
I mean, even when we're just duck hunting, I mean, I want them to be out to be looking out and scanning.
Yeah, for sure,
When
for sure. That
when we're pheasant hunting, especially with a flusher, I mean, I do kind of looking over their shoulder a little bit, paying attention to where I am, and
mhm.
you know, and just having that natural. I wouldn't say maybe it's not natural, but wanting to work as a partner, and I guess maybe that's a little bit what you're talking about. A dog that's just out there hunting, or a dog that is your partner in a hunt, and
Right.
there's a
And
big
that goes
difference.
and that goes into in our testing world in the categories that we're judging, we call that it's written down as cooperation. It's like
Mhm.
what they give you naturally, to say if let's say you took one of your pups and you quit field trialing and he just was that dog that looked up in the sky but handed you the bird naturally. He's a there is some naturally
Natural
uncooperative
cooperative.
dog.
Oh,
Yeah,
yes,
yeah,
I've encountered them, and
right. But it's
that
not been from their eye. It's not been from the lack of eye contact. It's been from the lack of what?
lack of just uncooperative dogs that think that they're going to run the show. Um, some animals are just belligerent. And I mean that's sometimes the most belligerent dogs I've ever ran into were also the most poorly bred. I mean,
Well,
a lot of times when somebody here's the weird thing too, that a lot of people, especially with labs, they have no idea where they even bought the dog. And the dog may be only be six months old when it comes for training. And I'm like, well, where'd you get the dog? Well, I really don't know. Like, how is that possible? But I can, a lot of times after I work with the dog a few times, I can ballpark guess where they come from. And I had a golden
Really?
retriever out here several years ago that came out for some private lessons, and like 45 minutes into the lesson, she was a really, really nice doggy. And I asked, "Did you get this dog on the way up to Duluth?" And he's like, "Yeah, yeah. How'd you know that?" I said, well, "Who'd you get this dog from?" And he goes, "Oh, the guy's name was Jerry." I think I said, "Greg." He goes, "Yeah, it was Greg. How'd you know?" Like, because because it looks like one of Greg's dogs because it's nice
Right. Right.
because it's a
Right.
really nice golden retriever, and there's like three places to get a field golden in the state of Minnesota. I mean,
That was a little bit of Karnak already knew the answer before you
yeah,
asked the question.
yeah,
Yeah, you knew
yeah.
the answer.
I was like, yeah, this looks like Greg's dog. So
Right.
but he didn't know where he got it, and I was like, "Oh, my goodness." But that's
So in developing a lab, and this is something, and we talked about this, I think, a little bit the other day. Um, I've I've noticed people, especially in my world, in the pointing dog world, starting earlier and earlier and earlier with what I would call advanced stuff. It, but then I also watch things like what is it? Cornerstone Gun Dog Academy. It's an
mhm.
online training for Labradors. They seem to be asking a lot of a puppy, in my opinion, just in my world. When do you get kind of serious about training, or is it just almost seamless and it's not definable?
I think you need to, whatever breed it is. I think you need to let it be a puppy and love it, because one of the most important things is, regardless of the breed, is make sure that you have a human connection with that animal. I mean,
Yeah,
because you're going to have bad days training,
sure.
and that you need to fall back on some sort of relationship with, whether it doesn't necessarily have to be with you, but that they understand that humans are awesome things, and
Yeah.
that humans are there for them, and that they're buddies. I had a guy bring me a half excuse me, half lab, half Catahoula cattle dog. And these Catahoula cattle dogs they're kill dogs for like hog hunting or lion hunting. I mean, this dog had kill in its eyes. And I trained this dog to do multiple, he wanted a duck dog out of it. So I trained him to do multiple marks. He was steady. He wouldn't go until his name was called. I got him to do land and water blinds with hand signals out to like almost 300 yards. So this was a way more complete duck dog than than the vast majority of hunters have.
Yeah.
But one of the things that made me successful with them is it was a hard training job. I had to really use my mind doing it. But this guy did an awesome job. He was single. It was just him and the dog, of giving this dog a very, very solid, positive relationship with people. And there's
Yeah.
times where I was like, wow, this dog's a little, he's not too far away from biting me, and a bite from him would have been like a bite from a pit bull. It'd been bad.
Mhm.
And so, seeing that, we massaged our way through it, and didn't and got our training accomplished without pushing him into like a violent red zone. So, you know, it doesn't. If you have a cocker or a lab or a griffin or something, obviously that those dogs, none of the dogs that we're hunting with have that red zone kill to them, like that
Yeah.
dog does typically. Yeah, but especially towards humans. So,
Right.
but it's just as important to have that human connection for the dog, so that they understand that whatever human it is his buddy or her buddy,
Yeah.
and so when we're doing boring stuff, the dog doesn't get his bad attitude about it. because there's stuff
Yeah.
that's just boring. And with here's the thing about looking at that Cornerstone gun dog stuff, and if you have a German short hair or a wire hair pointing Griffin or an English setter, it is training a retrieving dog or a spaniel is 180 degrees different from a pointing dog. So to try and get like discipline into that pointing dog that early is counterproductive. And it's just not a good thing. You need to let that little bugger explore and find stuff and think that the world is just a great thing, because with a fetching dog, with the retriever, we're we're asking them to have a lot of action going on around them, and I'm just supposed to sit there and wait for somebody to call my name. Well, we need to
Right.
probably start that pretty early, that thought at least,
Yeah.
because we're taking the motion out of retriever, where we're putting motion into a pointing dog.
Yeah.
It's just like we talked before about with a lab, we're going from control to chaos. We're teaching restraint, and then at some point we're going to cut them loose and say, okay, you know where that bird is, go retrieve, come back as quick as possible. With a pointing dog, we're going chaos to control. I want you to go and think that the whole world is yours to explore, and at some point we're going to rein that in.
Yeah.
Like when we can't catch him anymore, at about 6 months old, and we're gonna put some structure to it. So we add structure afterwards with the pointing dogs, and we add structure right up front with the fetching dogs. And
Well,
like when
that's
we're making a
explains.
versatile dog, treat him like an English setter for a year and a half. Let him be a
Yeah.
pointing dog, because we can
Yeah.
always add that restraint in later, and then say, okay, now we're going to teach you to be a duck dog. I don't care what your breed is, what your coat looks like. We're going to say that you're going to be a duck dog. It's no different than, I coached high school football for about a decade after I got out of college, and um, there was player evaluation around the campfire after scrimmages, and I mean, some you're dealt with in a small town football team, and
Right.
sometimes you have kids who just don't like to hit things, and you know what, you can't. All you can do with that is put them on punt return and give them a letter, because they're a senior. What am I supposed to do with a kid who's supposed to play outside linebacker who doesn't really like to hit things, Ron? Now,
Right.
as opposed to, one year, one of our fullbacks played hockey, and his nickname was Nutsy. And I literally, after the national anthem, I've known their family for a long time. His older sister is my age, and we went through Catholic school together, and Catholic grade school together, and graduated together. So I've known this kid since he was little. Right after
Yeah.
after pledge, or after the national anthem, we would stay on the end line and hold hands and do an Our Father together to get him focused, because I had to bring I had to put the reins on Nutsy a little bit, because
So,
Nutsy might just come up with 3 personal fouls this game if I don't get him focused.
so, so that goes back to dogs and kids are basically the same. I mean, at some points in their development, and
Oh, absolutely.
sometimes the nun has to be on the field with the ruler.
Yes, yes. Oh, yeah.
Well,
So, and I told you before that I actually used to work with emotionally behavioral disordered children, and it was, and I was the rules guy, to keep them under control in the classroom, and it's not so different with dogs.
right.
You have to have, for some of them, you have to have set rules, and by God, you cannot deviate from them.
You can't. And in dog training, I've been using the term a lot, impulse control, because dogs have an impulse like kids do, just to do something, and you got to
Mhm.
control that impulse, but make it seem like it's not punishment to control the impulse.
Oh, absolutely.
Just like any kind of steadiness, whether it's a retriever or pointing dog, in the end, it's their natural impulse would be to go do the next thing. And we're saying, no, not yet. Right. It's just early impulse control would make the later impulse control easier, which I've finally done. I'm finally back on that page with my string of dogs now, waiting to be fed, waiting to come out the door. I used to just let them go out the door, jump off the tailgate, run around the truck, couldn't get the collar on their neck because that didn't work too well. We could have used an Our Father before the grouse hunt.
little Our Father. Well, and we want to be quote unquote nice to our dogs, and so many times I see, the first thing guys do as soon as we pull into where we're going to hunt, let the dogs run around like buffoons while they're getting their hunting jacket on and everything. And to me, the last thing that should come out of the truck is a dog, because he needs to sit in there and understand, I'll let you out when I let you out. And I am also super parent, being in farm country, there's a lot of times where we're pulling over, even on public land. It's just a field approach next to a gravel road. Well, I don't want, I'm deathly afraid of my dogs getting run over.
Sure.
I mean, that road is the death zone. So just for safety and for control and for systems, just the same as when we get back to the truck, the first thing that happens, dog goes back in the box.
The gun can sit up on top of the truck and the shell vest can stay on. The birds are in the bag. Take a look at your dog, box them up. Now, you hit on something that I've been guilty of it. I'm less guilty of it now. But you could almost say there's those two kinds of guys, because you will see a group of guys get out and it's almost like, oh my God, my dog's been in the truck for 2 hours. He just can't stand it. No, they could stand it for another 10 minutes, But if that's how you always did it to your dog, then the dog whines. And this person says, my dog whines when he wants to come out of the box. Well, sure he does, because you always let him.
And then on the other hand, I have an 8-hole dog topper, and I'll have at least 8 dogs in there most of the time, and you don't hear a peep out of them. I mean, like when I go up to my dad's cabin in northern Minnesota, I park right next to the cabin. I mean, like 4 feet away, and there's 8 dogs sitting there all day. Wait, they get out several times, whatever, but they're not barking. They're just they're chilling. You go out the door to go fishing. They just shut up. Into a spazzing frenzy because they're comfortable on there and they know that's their home and they actually like to be there.
Yeah, this is going to be. I got to dive into the versatile world of the Blue Picardy, but
I would love to, because they are. I thinking about what we're going to do today, and sometimes it's good to actually have to say out loud and think why you do something or why you've chosen something. And you talked about German shepherds, or excuse me, German shorthairs, that can be nice pets, and I've got a couple that come back to me every year that are so they know me, they know the property, that they're my buddies. But I let them out. They don't go in the airing yard. I let them let them go out in the regular yard, unfenced, and in the morning and evening go potty. And one of them will come up to me after he goes potty, and will kind of stand next to me, and that's nice. But these Blue Picardys, they like kind of live for you, and they as soon as they're done going potty, they want to. I should stand in front of you and look at you and gaze into your eyes, and because we're bestest friends in the whole world, right? And
well, where was the start of that? Because I've heard of the breed, but only because of Craig Koshik's book. And in the versatile world that we judged, we saw some of the breeds from France, Brock Bourbonnais, Brock Arvon. We saw a few of them, and you've been around the versatile world yourself, as well as the the Labrador trial world, let's call it, retriever trial world. how did you find that breed? Because that's you would be like the first person I know that owns one.
Basically, I had heard about a guy that talked that had one, and I can't remember if he imported it from France or not. But I was looking for a pointing dog because, like I told you, I hooked up with Vance Butler, a field trial pointing
Back in the day,
guy. Yeah, it's about like 13, 14 years ago, and we went grouse hunting up by up at my family cabin, and
yeah.
I'd shot some grouse with my labs, but here and there. And we went out with one of his cover dog champions, and in 45 minutes we had like 15 finds. And he just turned to me like, "You told me that grouse hunting was all right around here. This is great." I'm like, "I've never seen it. I've never seen this many." And at that point, I realized this pointing dog thing and grouse, maybe there's something to it. And so I did, I wanted something as close performance wise to a English setter, because I mean, being with field champion dogs, I kind of like that. Um,
Mhm.
but I wanted them personality wise to fit in with my labs, and I wanted them to be, I wouldn't say a soft dog, but very very good with other dogs, because I have other people's dogs here. And the last thing I want is to have to call you and say, my dog took a bite out of your ear. Because
Right.
now, if your dog bites my dog's ear, I just take it to my dog to the vet and go, yeah, whatever. I mean, just the price of doing business. But I wanted a dog that was going to be good in the field. It was going to be a dog a dog that was going to be happy with other dogs and be good with people. And I
Mhm.
just did some research, and there's literally like 7 articles on the internet about these dogs, and it's all flowers and rainbows. And I thought, well, we'll
Yeah.
get one, and I'm like, oh, this is going to be a bunch of crap. But so
Right.
like the looks of them, because I have an affinity towards black dogs, and these dogs are mostly black with white and gray grizzling.
Yeah.
And I wanted a longer haired dog for, so I wouldn't have to worry about them freezing to death. I mean, matter of fact,
Right.
this morning, I had 3 of them out in the snow, and they were doing hot laps in the snowbank. So so
Right.
I want something the weather wasn't gonna hurt, and I found a breeder in France, and I said, you know what, I'll take one. And I
Wow.
took the risk, and it was about between $4,000 and $5,000 to import one, and it was a major pain in the butt. I mean,
Yeah.
even though I'm paying a broker to quote unquote do all the work for me, I spent um, I spent about 4 hours on the phone every morning from about 5 o'clock in the morning till 9, because of the time difference. Every day for the week prior to it coming,
Yeah.
just to make sure all the I's were dotted, T's were crossed, and
Right.
found out a lot about the differences between states and what they allow for rabies and all this other stuff. I ended up
Oh yeah.
having to drive to Chicago O'Hare to get it, which I was, you know, going to Chicago. If you don't live around there, you just, like, it,
You dread
I
it. You
can't
just
stand it.
dread it.
You
I
just
know.
dread
I
it.
know.
I mean,
I
it's like, can I get through this? If I'm going over there to Michigan, it's like, can I get through this as fast as I can? Oh my God,
yeah.
please
Yeah.
just don't let me break down. And actually, the Air France terminal is kind of out in the field, and it was very convenient to get to. But I picked her up, and um, spent about 3 years with my first one before I imported another one, because I wanted to make sure that it was everything that I read was pretty much true, and I wanted to make
Wow.
sure that it was what I wanted, and it was something that I could sell to somebody on the phone, talk to somebody on the phone, and be crystal clear,
Real for
truthful with
like
them. I
right.
want this to be a great product, because I mean, if it was just because this was a somewhat of a business decision. I could have went
Mhm.
and got a setter dog, a setter dog out of
Sure.
field trial lines from and been very happy hunting it. But I mean that,
Right.
but I wanted something a little different, something special, and I just absolutely fell in love with this dog. And I mean, to the point where, I mean, I've probably trained about a dozen different pointing breeds, and like I said, many of them are nice. There's some that I consider getting, but there's something about these blue dogs that I don't know. They're like magic to people, that they're just they suck you in. And so I then imported a couple more, and they were pretty much the same. And
And is
it
that
was a big risk.
because it's is that because it's just like from like a little bit of history? The Picardy is from a certain region of France. So
Yeah,
is it
it's from the north of Paris in the Somme River Valley, which apparently was like a sportsman's paradise pre World War One, and I think
yeah.
somewhat afterwards. But there's this little thing called the Battle of the Somme in World War One,
Yeah.
where about 10 million artillery rounds were exchanged, and they kind of wrecked
Yeah.
some stuff. But
Yeah.
little damage, not the same place, just a little bit. Um, and basically, these dogs started out about 120, 130 years ago as what the French are going to call a spaniel, because they kind of look spanielish with the long
Hmm.
hair.
Yeah.
Basically, they're duck dogs. They're retrieving dogs that I guess pointed a little bit, and then they brought in Gordon setters and Belgian blue setters to to create a true pointing dog.
Yeah.
And they only kept the dogs out of it that retain
The
their
coat. The
retrieving
coat.
desire.
Yeah.
And, yeah, the coat, the retrieving desire, and kind of that more spanielish retriever demeanor and personality. So that's and they just kind of been hidden in the north of France for a long time.
Wow. Yeah. It's a breed. Like I said, I haven't seen it. So when you say that kind of makes sense. They bred in some other dogs like they've all done over the decades and over the centuries to, let's say, okay, it's they didn't breed it to become the next pointing dog. They just wanted to get they wanted to get a better point out of it, but its strong suit was like, would you say, like the what we think of spaniels, cockers and springers, that retrieving was is that their is that their strongest suit?
I, I, I would say that the pointing might be stronger than the retrieving.
Wow.
They throw they throw a very nice point. I've only really have to put a couple birds in front of them to get them to point the first time.
Wow.
And yeah, because the color of them is from that Belton blue and the Gordon setter. So they put a lot of point into this dog, and that's what I wanted. I
Right.
didn't want some kind of like, well, it kind of points. I mean, to be brutally honest, this dog is exactly what the pointing lab people say they have, but don't. Be, uh, because this is an actual real pointer, a dog that when it gets in the scent cone, that little switch goes off that they don't even know
Yeah.
they have. I've got to stop. I need to
Right.
stop now. Why am I stopping? Well, I don't know, because I got to stop.
Right.
And they retain a strong retrieve. I wouldn't say,
Which is
some of them.
a difficult it's a difficult balance. They're
It's very difficult.
with and then in the pointing world, we could pick on setters and pointers from all the field trial. My partner Justin McGrail, he said across the board, 30% of setters are going to retrieve.
Yeah.
Across
Well,
the board.
that's why in training you guys call force fetch trained retrieve, because no matter
Right.
what, with some of those setters and pointers, they don't want to retrieve one bit. You are going to have to train them to, and thank God, theoretically, with a pointed bird, that you should only really be asking them to go make a 25, 30-yard retrieve. So it's not
Right.
some epic, it's not some epic thing. But yeah, I mean, there are some pointers and setters that you can play tennis ball with, and they have a great time,
Oh,
and
yeah, yeah,
some
yeah.
they just couldn't care less. And
Right.
you actually
Right.
have to teach them every step of going and getting a bird and it is straight up mechanical.
Well, Mark, have you only imported, or have you ever got to go over to France and see any of these other
Well,
places?
that's the next plan is here in the next month. I'm gonna plan a trip over to France and meet with the breeders that I've gotten dogs from, and hopefully be able to meet with a trainer too. So, and then of course bring back a couple more dogs. So that's and you know it'll get written off on the business. So I mean,
write-offs
the,
aren't
the,
free.
the,
They're convenient.
what's that?
Write-offs are never free.
No,
They're just convenient.
The money had to come from somewhere. I had to stash money away in a bank account. Yeah, I don't. Unfortunately, you don't go to the government and say, "Hey, I'm going to write this off. Can I get a check for that?"
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Don't worry.
Yeah.
Away.
Yeah. No, we've had a France fund for several years now, and so that's definitely going to be one of the upsides of having chosen this breed, that we're going to get to go to a nice place to go and buy more.
Oh, that is exciting. What is I mean, not exact numbers, Mark, but about how many are in, say, North America? Is there is there a parent club or a breed club with it, or are we not that?
When we get done with this, sometime this afternoon, I've got to call a guy in Canada, and I'm gonna and this winter I'm gonna set up a breed club. So because the first step to currently these are recognized by NAVDA, and they're recognized because I called the NAVDA office and said, "Hey, got this dog out of the European registry that you guys recognize. Would you recognize the breed?" And I, like, for the first time ever, I actually had all my stuff in order. I faxed a bunch of stuff to Maria, and fortunately, it was like 2 weeks before the NAVDA's annual national meeting, and they voted on it at the national meeting. And like 2 weeks after that, I had NAVDA registration for BP Blue Picardy 000001. And
that's it. So where are we up to in NAVDA? 0000015 or 12? Or
no, like 4, 5. I think that I think there's 2 other people that have them registered in NAVDA besides the ones that are in my kennel. And I produced 2 years ago. I produced the very first NAVDA litter. So the only NAVDA litter on the ground is mine.
Wow.
So
Yeah,
I mean,
were you able to talk anybody into doing the NA test with them?
Yeah, I believe a lady in Wisconsin did natural ability. Unfortunately, she couldn't get into a test until after the dog aged out. So they just let her run her for fun. And I can't recall what she got for a score, but that's unfortunately a couple of them that I wanted to do that with myself. A small surgery called a triple bypass got in the way one summer, and I mean, they're like, that's not really elective, as they say. Kind of, you need to get it done.
That wasn't Botox. No, elective surgery.
Yeah, that was not just for vanity. So my plan is I've got a couple that if not this summer, next summer, I'm going to run utility tests, and then the ones that I hopefully get this summer, next spring, I'll might have to run them in NA at the end of this year, depending on what their birth dates are.
Yeah. So Mark, as long as we're on that versatile subject, like you said, you've got them registered with NAVDA. Is the water, I don't want to say an issue. Did they take to water like you were hoping for, or was that already in the breed description too when you found the breed?
That was already in the breed description too, and they are excellent swimmers. Like once again, I was the first one that I ever had. I actually have a tan natural ability title on her from UKC and a water retrieve on her from
Mhm.
UKC, simply because they allow you to go till they're 3. So I didn't
Yeah.
age out of them
Yep.
as quick. And but she there was like 5 or 6 other breeds at the water retrieve test that day, and including short hairs and wire hairs and dogs you think, well,
Yep.
they should have some retrieve to them. She was the only one that went out and swam directly out, picked up the duck, brought it to me, and sat down and waited for me to take it from her hand. And I never force fetched that dog because she wasn't ready yet. And they swim like otters when they get in there. I mean,
Yeah.
I didn't. I had one be a little bit naughty last year at the lake at the cabin, and scream my head off while people, the last week of June when there's people all over. She
Yeah.
spent, I would say 20, 25 minutes chasing a bunch of ducklings, but I knew that they're too big by then for her to catch. But you know what? You go swimming for a while. You have a blast. I'm sure you come back to the cabin when you're done. And my niece and I, and I tried to call her back a couple times, and I was like, you know what? Whatever. Have fun. And my niece is like, well, is she supposed to be doing that? I'm like, well, you know what? She not really, but I don't really want to get after her that much for swimming around and chasing ducks, because she is supposed to do it, and we're all on vacation. She's having fun. Not exactly
Yeah.
the best dog trainer maneuver, but
Right.
yeah, they
But you weren't trying to impress anybody with the lack of recall on a
yeah,
duck.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
That lack of I would say yes. There are people that can train a dog just like you would train a lab. You could call a lab off of retrieve halfway through the retrieve, right?
oh yeah, yes,
But
and
you don't do that when they're first showing this desire to go get stuff. Yeah,
yes,
that's another.
and she hadn't been properly collar conditioned. So
Yeah,
so and I'm saying in the lab world, but that goes back to letting them be a quote unquote setter dog,
yeah,
until they get it, and then saying, if we want a duck dog out of it, then we're going to collar condition them like we would a retriever,
yeah.
and so that there is this really solid, really, you know, I in authoritarian almost obedience to them. I did.
Right,
I just didn't do that to her yet. I mean,
right.
I should
Yeah,
do that for her, because
right.
be honest, I was using her mainly as a pointing dog, so I just didn't.
Yeah, yeah.
It didn't matter at that point. But yeah,
So
they swim incredibly well, and when they may not be that interested in throwing a tennis ball out in the lake, but if you huck a dead duck or a pheasant out there,
pigeon or whatever.
yeah,
Yeah,
whatever, it's all
yeah.
it's laser focused and game on.
I got involved early on. My NAVDA numbers are not as low as yours, but when the Bronco got into this country and started getting recognized, and I didn't read the breed description. I actually helped a friend of mine get one from a breeder who the dog was returned to, and I kind of fell in love with that particular dog's demeanor. But then I started doing the like you did, like you're reading, like, wow, all these articles say the same thing. Well, the Italians, they're it's not the same thing. There's Broncos that can swim like an otter, and there's Broncos, and I own one to this day that refuse to use their back legs. Have you ever seen a dog never swim with their back legs? It's scary.
Yes, matter of fact, I had a lab that for a long time she would just front paddle, and I mean to the extent, yes, to the extent, and I mean this was a good dog,
Right.
and to the extent, one of the I had an all girl helper team that year for dog training, and so I turned to my neighbor Libby, who was on the high school swim team, like, you're a competitive swimmer. You got any ideas? And she's looked at me like, it's a dog. How would I know to teach a dog to swim? I'm like, well, I don't know, but we've been doing a lot of stuff like 2 weeks, and this thing's just as stupid as it was 2 weeks ago.
Yeah,
So yeah, yeah. And sometimes they just all of a sudden one day they figure out how to plane out and they're fine.
yeah,
But
yeah.
some of them never, especially
No.
like kind of like you're saying, a non water breed. Sometimes they
Right.
never figure it out.
Yeah, yeah, and I'm sure the Italians didn't do any of the versatile duck work. You know, it was probably all, I'm assuming because their cousin is Spinoni, they can use all four legs for some reason. I've never owned one, but I've judged a lot. But I was mortified when people would be getting these pups and they're calling me up like, Ron, this dog almost drowned. Like, I'm sorry. Probably should have told you that.
Well,
But
our expectation of like any dog we buy, being in a lake state, is like, well, we should be able to take them to the lake and they should swim
sure.
around and just have a grand time because I want to
Yeah.
go out in the kayak. They should follow me, and
Yeah.
you, there's a lot of breeds that'll stay on the shoreline and be like, yeah, that's awesome. I'll be waiting here for you. Have fun.
I'll turn the hot dogs over on the grill for you.
Yeah, yeah. Are you going out in the pontoon? Because I love that pontoon because it's real big. I don't
Right.
have to get off it.
But I don't want to fall off.
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
God forbid if I fall off.
Mark, I do want to. I'm not ready to wrap up. I hope you got a little time yet, but I
Oh,
just
we got a
wanted to
ton of
go
time.
back to your kennels Norse retrievers, and you don't do this just for yourself and competition. You're full on training kennel. What is it
Yeah.
for? Hunting? You have your focus on the hunting side of things, or on the trialing, or have you, because of your background, have you kept it in both directions?
My focus is on making nice dogs for people.
Yeah.
Literally whether it's a puggle that needs obedience training, or and I should make sure people understand. I don't field trial anymore. It has been a long time
Okay.
since I've done that, simply because in the retriever world for field trials, either you're in or you're out. And
Yeah.
I wouldn't be sitting here, complaining to you the last couple of days of having to plow 16 inches of snow, because I'd be down
Right.
south somewhere. And
Right.
and partly because of my physical limitations with the obviously, if I didn't have a bypass just for fun, it's because
Right.
things weren't working.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not like the old football knee where I go, you know what, I might want to get this done by sometime. It was
Right. Yeah.
massive chest pains and I can't breathe. So
Yeah. Yeah.
you're either all in or you're all out on the trials. I do still do hunt tests, which are a little more casual, but
Yeah.
really it's not most of the people that come to me are family dogs that hunt, and
Yeah.
some of the dogs are just straight obedience dogs, and it's, to be honest, it's kind of fun to take like you say, some sort of crossbreed or something, and get it to be an off lead family dog, that where they can
Yeah.
have it off lead. It'll recall. It'll sit for them. It'll walk down a bike path with them at heel, and be like I say, we
Yeah.
turn them into a real human being. Um,
Yeah.
and that was part of what with the Blue Picardys. I wanted something that people would be super happy to have as a family dog, because
Right.
unfortunately we don't get to hunt as much as we'd like to, and
No, no, very few
yeah,
people do. Very,
yeah, very few people do, and they have, since they're going to be in. It's a rarity now to have a dog out in the kennel behind the house. Most
oh,
most
100%.
dogs are house dogs, and I wanted a breed that was going to be great in the house, and great with kids. And like I said, that I mean, if they walked up to the neighbor's dog, and the neighbor's dog growled at them, their response would be like, well, "What are you doing? That seems kind of mean. What's your problem? I'm
Yeah.
just standing here." And
Yeah.
I know you don't have this problem there in Michigan, but here in Minnesota in the grouse woods, we have these things called wolves, and I'm sure you've never encountered any of them where you live.
I did up in the UP, and it's scared the death out of me, and I don't want to personally be anywhere near them. So yeah.
Bingo.
Yeah.
And I wanted to, So some of the German dogs can be snorty and kind of full of themselves. And I wanted a dog that if we cut a wolf track or jumped one, heaven forbid, that it
Yeah.
would run back to me screaming, pull the pistol, pull the pistol.
Oh,
Because
doesn't everybody make inferences to that about the French when it comes to even though they got us out of the Revolutionary War, they always talk
well,
about yeah.
the I have two sides of my family as far as the French. Um, my uh, my first dog that I imported, I named her Evie because my grandma, so my dad's mom, my grandma Marcel, her mother was a French war bride. Great grandpa Morris fought in World War I, met this girl named Evie Cologne, and brought her back as a French war bride. So I thought, well, great grandpa imported a French girl. I'm importing a French girl. I'm naming her after great grandma Evie. So
I like
we've got
that.
that we've got that side, and then we've got my grandpa who taught me to hunt and trap, and so it's my dad's dad who was a very big part of who I am, and he would constantly make fun of the French, and that's the only time I saw my grandma get mad at my grandpa. And here's the funny thing, Ron. Um, so like so many people, so many men, the day after Pearl Harbor, he went and signed up, and he signed up for what I call the Spartan plan. It was the duration plus 6 months. So you either win or you die. So
Yeah.
so if the war would have lasted 10 years, he would have been in for 10 years plus 6 months. And
Wow.
and he did three amphibious landings, one in North Africa, Sicily, and Italy. And the first one in North Africa, the forces that met him on the beach that shot at him first were the Vichy French, the French that turned and became loyal to the Nazi government that was installed in France after the Nazis took
Yeah.
over. So he never really got over being shot at by Frenchmen. He he held a he held a grudge
Okay.
the rest of his life to the
I
point
can't
where
blame them.
he used to I'm going to just call he used to prize fight because he was good at knocking people out, and loan shark. That's how he made money. He was a sergeant, and he was the enforcer, and apparently he loaned some money to some Allied French officers, and they wouldn't pay up, so he beat the tar out of them.
Jesus. Well, there's a
So
rabbit hole we don't go down very
yeah, yeah,
often.
but he never really got over making fun of the French, and yes, the phrase "cheese eating surrender monkeys" was a common saying around my grandfather's house. So yes,
I gotcha.
that is one of their traits, that they are kind of, for training they're quite good. They can take correction, but they're wusses. and
Good. Hey,
and I
named
kind of like that.
have you named any? So you named your first import after the grandma. Have you
Yeah.
named any dogs after your grandpa who was influential?
I don't think he'd like to. I mean, I would name a Labrador after Grandpa Hank, but not one of these. I
Okay.
think he would be upset that I'd name one of these French dogs. I mean,
Yeah. Hank. I know
my
Hank. Yeah.
what's that?
I said I know a Labrador named Hank. Yeah, Hank can work on a lab for sure. Yeah.
And the first boy dog that I imported, though, I named Hammer after Charles the Hammer Martel, who was a French king that basically saved Europe, Christendom, in Europe. So the Moorish army was coming up through southern France and had already taken over Spain. And in the Battle of Tours in 732, outnumbered 3-1, Charles the Hammer, because he had a war hammer, so he didn't
Yeah.
stab you, he smashed your dang skull. So I've got the male, one of the males that was at the show last weekend was Hammer, Charles the Hammer Martel, after who
Gotcha.
is, yeah. So in his I'm a history buff, and so he was the grandfather to the first Holy Roman Empire, Charlemagne. But
I'll be damned.
without Charles the Hammer Martel, we would all be Muslim. So
I didn't know that. So
yeah,
that's actually kind of an opposite. You named these dogs that are so sweet. You gave them that strong name. Just
yeah, and actually
Grr.
the next male that I import, I think I'm gonna probably name Tiger, after the Flying Tigers. Oh boy, I'm trying to think of. Are you familiar with the Flying Tigers of in World War II, the Air Force outfit in China?
yeah, they had the
Okay,
big
so
tiger mouth on the
yeah,
P-51.
yeah. So that was led by an American colonel with a French name, and I cannot remember his name right now. But that's one name. Eventually, I'll name a dog Charlemagne. Hammer and Claire's son, who I kept, I named Louis after King Louis. So I try and keep them. It's kind of historical figures.
In as much as we're in the NAVDA registry in the low digits, are there some other? You mentioned a fellow up in Canada. Is there a few other folks like yourself that have found the breed that will kind of become
Yeah,
that base?
they are slightly known in Canada. So,
Okay.
but they're kind of lack a consistency of breeding them. I mean, like my male is actually from Calgary, from a guy named Vince Alejo, and I butcher his last name, but so but he's actually run them in shoot to retrieve, and he's got a shoot to retrieve field champion up there in Calgary. And so that girl is a French import, and he and his buddy imported another dog from France, and they had a litter, and that's where I got Hammer from. So
Gotcha.
there are a few people in uh, Canada, but very few,
Yeah.
and you know they're and they're more individuals having a litter here and there.
Yeah.
And one of the things after I uh, became involved in these dogs, and for some reason fell in love with them. And I don't know if I told you this, but I mean, I've had labs that were fine gun dogs, but weren't what I wanted, and I've sold them.
Mhm.
And because you can't keep every dog, so I'm not the kind of guy who just falls in love with a dog. I mean,
Right.
if you're not going to work out, you can be somebody else's pet, and I'm going to go do
Yeah.
something better. But there's
Yeah.
something about these dogs that I fell in love with, and now not only selling them as a business proposition or using them for myself for hunting, I almost feel like this obligation to the breed to make sure it doesn't die, make sure that there is the if I die in 20 years, that there's many more of these in
There's
America
some
and in the
good.
world
Yeah. Yeah.
than there was, because it's having dealt with hundreds and hundreds of dogs, and the vast majority of them being very ordinary. To
Right.
have a breed that has this spark to them is special, and I don't want it to go away. I mean, there's almost a crusade aspect to it. Of I feel like I need to get these dogs out into people's hands so that the breed continues. And like I said, the goal is to have 2 to 3 litters a year, which isn't that many, but it's that would make me the biggest sporting dog breeder of these things in North America.
Right.
It-
Right.
I mean, it's being the tallest midget on the basketball team, I guess.
Yeah.
But it's such a breed that I'm shocked that I'm the first gun gun dog person who really likes to hunt, that has taken a chance on them. And
Mark,
not
Mark,
everybody wants to breed.
No, and it's not for everybody. That's a whole nother. That should be a subject of a podcast someday. Get about 6 breeders on, and you will literally talk people out of becoming a breeder because that's a
Yeah.
whole nother. Everybody knows that. But
Yeah,
when you were
the joys of starting labor at 1 o'clock in the morning, and terrible
yeah.
things like you're gonna watch a puppy die
Oh yeah,
because
yeah. That's yeah. There's nothing. Being a breeder of dogs is like being a pioneer in the 1700s. You knew a lot of the people you knew were going to die. Period. I mean, that's
yeah,
just the way it
yeah.
was. You just went past it. You got to get past it. But when you were at Pheasant Fest, I'm assuming you went in the bird dog parade with the dogs. But while
Uh,
you were there, did you what? How many people said what breed is it, or did they guess at it? Give people kind of a you kind of alluded, but I don't think we gave a good description. If I was seeing you walk down the street with a Blue Picardy Spaniel, the Spaniel part throws everybody. What would be the first wrong guess?
um, maybe some kind of setter or a small Moosterlander that has no white on it,
Okay.
because they're primarily black dogs
Mhm.
with small patches of white, say on their. I've had a couple that have had like nickel to quarter size pure white spots on the top of their head, and that's a trait from a certain kennel. And then you'll
Yeah.
see a couple little, like little pebble size white spots on their legs, but most of the coloring um, is gray and a little bit of white into the black hair, that produce like you would see on a setter or a pointer, a saddle, but in a negative fashion. So instead of white with a dark spot, you're going to have black with a little bit lighter grayish saddle or spot, and they'll have little uh, like the tip of the tail sometimes are white, with maybe a little bit of coloring in there, and pretty very heavy feathering on their legs. So
Well,
they're elegant looking dogs.
you're going to have to send me a couple of good pictures because when I post this, it's usually on Sunday, I
Mhm.
like to put a picture up of the breed we're talking about. And so, yeah, if you could get me a couple pictures so people
Yeah,
can like,
absolutely.
oh, because
They're
like
they're
you said,
beautiful dogs.
you read up on this dog, and then you kicked the wheels and you put some miles on it before you said, man, consistently, I'm getting what I'm getting what I read about. And
Yeah.
so I'm sure people are going to, on top of that, because people do go, temperament and traits. Sometimes people just go for looks. And
Well,
I'm sure a few people are going to want to see what they look like. If they're beautiful, let's
well,
show
that that
them.
that's why one of the picture that I'm probably going to send you has my niece in it, because she's a very beautiful young lady, and I am,
Yep.
how should we say,
Not
ugly,
photogenic.
not
Oh,
built for radio.
yeah. There we go. There we go.
And because yeah, people like to see pretty things, and I don't know if you're familiar with Mary Howley, but she is, for the past
Mm-mm.
40 years, probably the top breeder of Labrador retrievers in the world. I mean, in the 90s, in the field trial world, we have an amateur, a national amateur field champion, and then an open field trial champion. So two national champions every year. And through the 90s, I think that her dogs, the dogs that she bred, took 16 out of the 20.
Wow.
And
Well,
yeah,
I
so,
gotta
so
make a
and
note. I got to get
what's
that.
that?
I need to get her information from you, and I'll tell you off camera why.
Okay.
Or off
And
video.
you're gonna have to have a, if you record something, you might want to have a beeper. She's got a sailor mouth. Love, nice, great
That's
lady. I've sat and talked to
I,
her. Right, I sat and talked to her at a hunt test all weekend once, and I'd met her a couple other times, and she made the comment of, if I'm going to have the choice between a pretty dog and an ugly dog, and they both can make field champion, why would I ever have an ugly dog? And and that was part of the attraction to these dogs. They're pretty, and it's
Yeah.
you don't want somebody to say, "What's that ugly thing?"
Yeah.
It's
Well,
better
I've
it's
had
better to have yeah it's better to have a beautiful dog, and they're very photogenic. If I could take a decent picture, that would help. But yeah, they have a quite broad head on them. Um, they look like a really nice like a nice Labrador with a little bit longer snout on them. They have quite a big face. Um, and especially when they're combed out a little bit, they do require a little bit of grooming. But I mean,
Sure.
my idea of a little bit of grooming, when you have all Labradors, the cheapest shampoo that Walmart sells and a garden
Is
hose is your grooming tools.
right.
So having to own a couple of brushes is like extreme for me. But
Yeah.
if you've had any kind of long haired breed, it's the same.
Yeah, it's the
Um,
same thing. Well, Mark, I think, well, obviously we talked yesterday, and our paths are going to cross sooner than later because you might be coming through Michigan, and then I travel through your neck of the woods on my way to the Dakotas. So we're going to meet firsthand. But this will be interesting to watch the progression of the Blue Picardy Spaniel,
well,
which, to everybody who didn't get this, is a pointing dog. Just because the
yes.
last name's Spaniel, it is
The
a pointing dog. I'm just
the
reiterating.
French misuse the word spaniel. It really should be setter pointer. I
Yeah,
mean, especially since the Gordon setter and English setter were heavily bred into them. I mean, it really.
right.
And I thought thought about it as as we get down the road farther to AKC recognition, should we change the name? I
Yeah.
mean, would it make more sense to call the Blue Picardy setter, or just call it a Blue Picardy, and
Just
kind of
Blue
like how the
Picardy.
Britneys did. Yeah, I
Yeah,
mean,
they dropped
yeah,
Daniel.
yeah, because it is a true pointing dog, and if it
Yeah.
wasn't a true pointing dog, I would have got rid of it because I wanted a pointing dog to hunt grouse with and to hunt big open short grass prairie. Because I mean,
Yeah.
there's if you ever owned a lab and you're out in the western Dakotas, and you see this expanse of maybe you know two or three sections of continuous short prairie grassland. Like, I'm
Yeah.
sure there's birds out there, but it'll take like 3 months for me and my lab to cover it all. So we're gonna
Yeah.
we're gonna stop the truck and go look for some more spots to shoot ducks at. You
Yeah.
know, um,
Hey,
but
that's a perfect stop of
okay,
thinking about North Dakota and and I always find it, interesting when someone I would we could kind of say you were a lifelong lab man and you still love labs, you still breed
yeah,
labs, you still but you found something that just you found out that there was more grouse in the backwoods than you thought there were from
yes,
from
yes.
a very good setter, and it kind of sent you on a grail quest, didn't it?
It did, and these dogs, like I say, are legitimate pointing dogs. They really are a truly nav to breed because they are versatile. I mean,
Yeah,
unless you're hunting big water late season for diver
right,
ducks, most duck hunting situations, these dogs will do the job very well. Um,
right. Like most
and
of them.
yeah, yeah. I mean, and I'm going to say that it just would be just like many versatile breeds. It would be unfair to set them on the bow of the boat when it's 33 degrees out,
Oh yeah,
and we're looking at there's 4 foot rollers out there, and we're
yeah.
trying
No,
to
there's a
to
there, there's a reason duck hunters spend more money on gear and not worrying about the lab is a true specialist when it comes to that. I mean, he's the
yes, yes.
specialist, and but you got the best of both worlds. It sounds like, Mark.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, if these weren't really great dogs to be around, and they weren't getting the job done in the field, I would have got rid of them.
Right.
Because I mean, because I'm not an especially good liar when it comes to dogs, and my
Yeah.
sales pitch for my labs are pretty plain. Well, they come from very good parents. They're very trainable, and they're great in the house. Okay,
Yeah.
that's all I got. Sorry.
Well, there you go. Let me stop this here, and thank you for coming on.
Hey,
Like I
thank you so
said,
much for having me. I mean,
I mean,
I really do love to talk about these Blue Picardy Spaniels.
I
They're just a really neat breed.
well, once I get to see one in person, we're going to do another podcast after I get to see him in person, Mark.
Awesome, awesome. All right,
All
thank you,
right.
Ron.
See ya.
Bye bye.